It's been a long week for the Prime Minister. He's trying to save the steel industry, he's battling Brexit, and he's faced a flood of questions about his family wealth.
I should deal with the past as well.
Questions that today he tried to put to rest. Questions like, has he benefited from the offshore fund set up by his father Ian, Blairmore Holdings? Today, talking to ITV News, he finally admitted he did.
Samantha and I had a joint account and we owned 5,000 units in Blairmore Investment Trust, which we sold in January 2010. That was worth something like £30,000.
Is there a profit on it?
I'd paid income tax on the dividends, but there was a profit on it, but it was less than the capital gains tax allowance, so I didn't pay capital gains tax, but it was subject to all the UK taxes in all the normal ways.
But that may not be the extent of the Prime Minister's benefit. Last night, Channel 4 News revealed that Ian Cameron owned 6,000 shares in a second offshore fund based in Jersey, the Close International Equity Growth Fund. When he died in 2010, these assets were passed on to his family. Today, his son David Cameron admitted there is no way of knowing whether he inherited part of that offshore legacy.
He left me some money, very generously, quite a lot of money, and I've been able to
tell us how
use
much?
that. I think it was published at the time. It was £300,000. It was published at the time, as these things are. I obviously can't, point to every source of every bit of the money, and Dad's not around for me to ask the questions now.
But the Prime Minister is adamant that despite being set up in a tax haven, the scheme set up by his father was not designed to avoid tax.
I think a lot of the criticisms are based on a fundamental misconception, which is that Blairmore Investment, a unit trust, was set up with the idea of avoiding tax. It wasn't. It was set up after exchange controls went so that people who wanted to invest in dollar-denominated shares and companies could do so.
According to the Prime Minister, everyone who invested in Blairmore Holdings would have at some point paid full and fair UK taxes. Experts aren't so sure.
David Cameron, with respect, doesn't know what tax was paid by those who invested in the Blairmore Fund. He can say that if people who held those bearer shares declared all of the income and gains that they were obliged to on their UK tax returns, they would have paid UK tax. But the problem with that argument is that he does not know, and what we do know about bearer shares is that they are an invitation to avoid tax.
And this expert questions whether Blairmore Holdings was really any better than the very funds the Prime Minister has criticised in the past.
Established as it was in Panama with bearer shares, this fund is an invitation to those who choose to accept it to evade tax. What David Cameron has talked about as being morally repugnant is tax avoidance.
Today was one of difficult questions for the Prime Minister, but one still remains. In light of this week's revelations, does this leader still have the credibility to make tax transparency his legacy?